All right, so like I said, I am hoping to do more of a vlog style update in May because it just helps me remember books a little bit better than when I sit down to do a May final wrap up at the end of the month. So I have finished my first book of May, and I actually finished it last night. So, and of course it's sitting over here, so give me 1 second. And yes, I have a shirt on that says must have beach today. So on brand for sure. But I finished Hello Transcriber by Hannah Morrissey. And the cool thing I think about this one is Hannah Morrissey is a local author to me. She is an author from Wisconsin, so I think that's awesome. And I can't even remember where I heard about this one. It probably was from Audrey at Chapter First. But this one is all about a woman who moves down to middle of Wisconsin from northern Wisconsin and takes a police transcriber's job. Now, I had to do a little research. I do have a good friend who is a police officer, and I said, okay, so tell me about transcribers, because I was almost positive they wrote their own reports, but it turns out in either certain departments or in the past, police would call in and basically dictate their whole report, and then someone on the other end would transcribe it. And that was what this person did. And she kind of moves to, I think it's Black Harbor. And lots of things are happening in this town. There's kind of this big bridge that people are known for jumping off of to unfortunately end their lives. And there also is someone that they refer to as Candyman, who is kind of dealing drugs. And as the story goes on, these drugs end up being fatal for some young children, as well as one adult, I believe. But our story kind of goes there. This transcriber, excuse me, meets a police officer through kind of this transcribing that she's doing, and basically teams up to help him solve who this Candyman character, this drug dealer is, and try to break the series of things that have been happening since then. So I really enjoyed it. I liked how we got, I listened to the audiobook, and we got actually what the recordings would sound like, and you're getting all of this from the glimpse of our main character, Hazel. And so I really enjoyed that aspect of it. There was a little bit of a romantic element in here that, I don't know, took me out of the mystery thriller side of things. But overall, I did quite enjoy it, and I gave this one a 4. So good way to start off my month of May. I have a book going on my Kindle right now that is the complete opposite of this one. It's more on the chick lit romance side, and yeah, now I just have to decide what I'm going to pick up next. But I do have Hannah Morrissey's next book, the audiobook, and I believe it's The Widowmaker. I had that as an ARC from NetGalley, but I wanted to make sure I read this one first. So I believe I should be able to pick that one up. So that is what I've started in May. We'll see where the month takes me. I am back with actually another 2 books finished. So the first one I finished this past Sunday, and it's Tuesday. So I am trying to keep up on the promise of kind of doing this mini vlog version of my May reading updates, but it is what it is. But hey, I'm back in my beautiful background of a workspace. So the very first book, or the second book I finished in May, was The Beach Trap, and this is by Allie Brady. Allie Brady is actually an author duo, which I didn't know, which is pretty cool. And I picked this one up. Honestly, it was on my Kindle. I don't even remember when I got it. And I was just kind of looking for something light and fun to read. I had been reading a couple thrillers, so I just kind of needed that palate cleanser. And I'm still on my Kindle kick, so I want to do a little bit of Kindle reading, a little audiobook, and whatever. So The Beach Trap was great. I really enjoyed it. It basically is a premise. You get this, it starts out with these 2 girls at camp. They're 12. And towards the end of the summer, one girl ends up having to leave because her grandfather has died, and when her father comes to pick her up, the other girl recognizes it as her father. And they, neither of them knew this. And so they leave, and they basically don't speak for another, I forget, it's like 15 to 20 years. And come to find out that in the future, this man passes away who ends up being both of their fathers and leaves them a beach house in Destin, Florida, and they each get half. Now, these two haven't spoken since they were 12 and in summer camp, and the whole book focuses on, their process of kind of redoing this beach house and the miscommunications that each of them have and the differences in growing up kind of with the same father, even though they might not have known it. And I really, like I said, quite enjoyed it. I gave it a 4. And it was just, a good kind of palate cleanser, and I am a sucker for anything that's based on the beach. So, and there was a little bit of romance involved too, but not enough that it drove me nuts, because we all know how I feel about romance. So, and then the next book I picked up is actually something for a book club through school that I'm doing, and that was Touching Spiritfire by Ben Michelson. I had never read this before, and it is like a YA middle grade, but we were looking for themes, for different themes that connected with different ideas that our district is focusing on, and this one talks about like restorative justice. And basically it was written in 2001, and I was kind of trying to figure that out through the whole story. But Cole is our main character, and he gets in a lot of trouble, like constantly in trouble. He lives in Minneapolis and is just constantly in trouble, and he opts into, instead of going to like jail, opts into doing this like restorative justice circle so that they can decide how he is going to kind of serve out his punishment and different things. So he gets sent to like a remote island in Alaska, and the first time around doesn't go so well. So he ends up back in a detention center, and they decide that they're going to try it one more time. And that first time he gets like mauled almost to death by a bear. And so they go back, and it's this process of how he's kind of got to come within his own healing, as well as one of the reasons why he's in this punishment is he beat up someone back in Minneapolis. And so it's basically a whole story, coming together for him, not just to get punished and automatically sent to jail, but kind of having this different way of getting justice. So I can't wait to talk about it with my group. We're going to be meeting this coming Friday to talk about it. And yeah, it was a really interesting read. I gave it a 4 as well. It wasn't perfect. I thought the ending was a bit rushed, but it introduces some really interesting ideas. And this is why I'm excited to talk to my group of, not always just, punishing people in the traditional sense. What else could we do to kind of help them overcome, I guess, their demons, so to say. So those are the 2 books that I have read recently. I will be back with many more, I'm sure. All right, quick morning update. Before I head off to work, I finished another book yesterday, and that was I Must Betray You by Ruta Pettis. Pettis? I always say it wrong. This one was really good. I had heard several of my friends talk about it, including my friend Nicole, and then I think Lindsay from Lindsay's Little Library read it as well. This one is set in Romania in 1989 during the revolution, which I was alive in 1989. Granted, I was 2, but I had absolutely no idea that this was going on. And I think even today, like, it's a part of history I just didn't know about. And we are following a 17-year-old named Christian, basically who becomes this informant, but he's kind of second guessing, like, and by informants, they were people that fed information, to the government about the people around them, people in their family, etc. And he thought it was an exchange for medicine for his grandfather who was dying. And the story just talks about all of the different things that they kind of looked out for and things that the government is controlling in the country. And it just really opened my eyes because it wasn't something that I knew much about at all. And to think that this was happening in the late 80s is just wild, because it seems like something that would have been more like World War II time or even earlier. And so it was really just like hard to even stomach the fact that this was happening in 1989. So I quite enjoyed it. I gave this one 4.5. I thought the beginning was a little slow because so much happens in the end. I wanted that end timeline to be drug out a little bit more, and not so rushed compared to the beginning of this book. But it was really great. I don't think Ruta can write a bad story. I've enjoyed everything that I've read by her pretty much so far. And yeah, like I said, this one didn't disappoint. So 4.5 stars with this one, and we will see what I pick up next. So tonight I finished another book, and that was Happy Place by Emily Henry. And I loved it, which probably comes as a bit of a shock because typically I'm a little harder on romances, but I don't know if I would call this one a romance. To me, it's more like a self-discovery and story of friendship with love attached versus just a straight up romance. I mean, it is second chance romance, but it's so much more than that. And I really loved it. Now, granted, I listened to the audiobook and it is read by Julia Wayland, my favorite audiobook narrator probably of all time, which really probably helps the story along for sure. I can understand why this book gets mixed reviews. So especially if you've heard other people talk about it. I actually was just watching a YouTuber the other day who spoiled it actually a little bit for me, because she was ranting about how much she hated it, which is totally fine. Everyone is entitled to their opinions, and I could understand where she was coming from in her opinion, because one of the main tropes in here is miscommunication. But in the moment that I read it over the last couple days, to me, it's just what I needed. I loved the friend group in here, and you know, the talking about as you're getting older and being in your older adult lives, like your friendships don't necessarily fall apart, but they do change, and I loved seeing that theme in this book, as well as, you know, grappling with adult life and the changes that brings. So I really enjoyed it. I think it's one of those books that you're gonna have to decide for yourself, because it is going to be one of those that you either really love it or really just didn't enjoy it. And like I said, I loved it. So, and I highly suggest the audiobook. I mean, Julia Wayland can do no wrong. So that is the latest book that I have finished. I am really close to finishing one on my Kindle. I don't know if I finish it tonight, but most likely by tomorrow night I will have that one done, and I will update when you get there. So we'll see you then. All right, a little bit of a different setting for my update today. I've actually got this adorable like little creek runoff. I don't know, I'll flip the camera around in just a second. But last night I finished Fighting Words by Kimberly Bluebecker Bradley. It's a tongue twister there. A coworker actually suggested it to me to read, and I would say it's definitely like YA middle grade, probably more middle grade, but so good. Definitely give it 5 stars. It's a book about two girls who are sisters. One is 16 and I think the other one is 10, and they end up in foster care because their mom has gone to prison, and they ended up living with mom's boyfriend, and mom's boyfriend was doing some not so great things to each of the girls and got caught and is going to be on trial. And so it kind of goes through the process of the girls finally going to foster care and just the things that they're going through, kind of dealing with this trauma that they've had in their lives. And our main character is so funny. She's got a little bit of a mouth for a 10-year-old, and she inputs the word snow instead of swearing, and it's just kind of adorable and a little scary as a teacher that you might have a kid using that kind of language. But the story was super touching, and it just really opens your eyes to think about, especially as a teacher, you know, what kids are going through on your day-to-day. So that is my most recent update, and yeah, I just thought I would share some of this beautiful landscape on the hike that I am on today. Let me flip my camera around here if I can. You know what? I don't even know if it's gonna let me, but we've just got some gorgeousness going on today. So I need to learn my phone a little bit better, but I will come back at you with my next updates.
All right, I'm back with another book update. Last night I finished, gosh, I don't even know what number of book this is for the month of May, but this most recent one was Ruth Ware's The Turn of the Key. So this one was interesting. I usually like Ruth Ware, and I did enjoy this one. Audiobook is super creepy. There is a part where our main character, Rowan, who goes to, she gets a job as a live-in nanny in this home in Scotland. It's very remote, and it's like a smart house. Everything about this house is like controlled by like little panels on the wall. There's video cameras everywhere, whatever. And at night, she hears like creaking of the floorboards, and because I listened to the audiobook, the narrator would just, the way she said the word creak was always like creak. It just like, made my skin crawl. But anyways, random fact about the audiobook. So Rowan, our main character, is working with his family, and there are 3 small children, one of whom is a very hard character to crack. And the parents are basically automatically gone. They are, I believe, architects, and so the nanny is left with these 3 small children. And there is like kind of, he's not a gardener, but he's like a housekeeper. He keeps up the grounds, he takes care of the dogs, everything. And then so she's responsible for the children. And it is just kind of a wild ride of trying to figure out like what this sound is, why all of these things keep happening in the house, because the house is all controlled with an app. Things don't always work right. She doesn't feel like she's got control of everything, and then all these random things start happening. So it was super creepy, and it kind of took me a while to figure out. I didn't guess the ending, but I did feel that there were parts of this book that were just a little too long, and I was like, okay, like, let's get to what's happening, because we know at the beginning of the story, our main character is in jail, waiting trial. So I don't think she's in prison yet, but she's in jail waiting her trial, and she's writing to like this lawyer to help her out. And so the whole time I was like, all right, let's get to it. Let's get to it. So I enjoyed it. I gave it a 4. Because there were definitely parts that obviously were really creepy, and I didn't guess the ending, but just because of that, like, all right, let's like keep going. I wanted to give it a 4. So Ruth Ware, I'm still a fan, and we will see what I pick up next.
All right, so I almost forgot to record this update because I finished this book like 2 nights ago, but I read an unexpected book. My library hold for You Shouldn't Have Come Here by Geneva Rose came through. I put in for the audiobook, and so I just finished that the other night. And I have to say, I was a little bit disappointed. After absolutely loving The Perfect Couple, which I read over my spring break trip, I had really high hopes for this one, and I just feel like it fell short. And I'm seeing that kind of happen in a lot of the reviews that I'm reading about it. It basically is a book where our main character, who quite honestly, I can't even remember her name at the moment, basically throws a dart at a map. Like, this is her thing, and like that's where she's gonna go for her trip away. And she's going by herself, and this time she's going to a ranch in Wyoming. And there is a guy there that runs this like Airbnb where he lets people stay at his house, but it's a ranch that he runs. They're able to do kind of anything they want on the ranch. And so she decides to go and stay there for this week. And, you know, it is kind of questionable. Like, the small town seems a little weird, but the whole first part of the book felt like a really bad written romance and not a thriller to me. Like, I could see certain things that would like lead you to question like little thriller things, like an interaction she has with a small shop owner who already knows her name, or just little questionable things that are happening in the story. But a lot of it was like these 2 people like quickly falling for each other, which most of you would probably know is not my thing. And because I just don't think it's believable. And so I didn't really get hooked into the story until like the last quarter of it, when like the thrillery stuff started happening, and I won't say anything because I don't want to spoil it. But yeah, if any of you have read this, I would be really curious to know what your thoughts are, because The Perfect Marriage had me hooked and like I just wanted to keep reading, and this one, I just was kind of like, this doesn't seem even believable. So I'll be curious to see what other people think. I'm trying to think if any of my other like booktube friends have read it yet. I'll have to go back and look. But yeah, I just was kind of like, I don't get it. So I'm not going to give up on Geneva Rose. I am definitely going to pick up the other things that she has written. And I just discovered her on TikTok and she's hilarious. She actually does these reaction videos with her husband, like reacting to like romantic comedies and stuff. So they're really funny. But yeah, this one just wasn't for me. I'm pretty sure I rated it a 3. Yeah, so that is that. Today is Sunday of Memorial Day weekend, so I'm not sure whether or not I'll finish another book, but I have off through Tuesday, so I may get a chance to finish another book before the end of May is over. I am currently in the middle of one. It's going a little slow, but we shall see if I finish it here before the end of May. So my air conditioner may be a little loud in the background, and I am fresh from the gym, but I did finish another book last night. I finished my arc of the 5-Star Weekend by Ellen Hildebrand, and I enjoyed it. This one took me a while to get through because I tend to read books on my Kindle while I'm listening to something else. And I was a little bit busy last week. We had a lot of things going on at school. This week is actually our last week of school for the school year. And of course, we are being blessed with high 80s and 90-degree weather all week long when most of our schools don't have air conditioning. But anyways, besides the fact, the 5-Star Weekend is based off of our main character, Hollis, who unfortunately at the beginning of her book, her husband dies in a car crash. And she sees this idea of having this 5-Star Weekend where you pick 4 different friends from different time periods of your life to come and you have a weekend together. Now, she has a house in Nantucket, which I have not read any of your other books that were based in Nantucket, so that was interesting. And it kind of goes through this process of their weekend together, as well as some of their past. Hollis's daughter is there. They have kind of a strained relationship, especially since the death of her father. But she's going to film it for the weekend, and so you get these backstories of what's going on with all of these different women. The one thing that drove me nuts, and this didn't happen in some of Ellen's other books, was that there wasn't chapter breaks for different characters. So the other 3 books that I've read by Ellen Hildebrand so far were the Winter in Paradise series, and that one didn't necessarily have chapters, but you knew when you were switching perspectives because she would actually highlight like the name of the character that you were switching to. And in this one, we had chapters, but within a paragraph, or not within a paragraph, but in a separate paragraph, you'd switch character perspectives. And so it did get a little confusing because, especially when you don't have all the characters straight right at first, you just, it switches on you. So that drove me nuts. But other than that, I quite enjoyed it. Just like I don't want to call it a cute read, but just an easy read. Pretty predictable, and I did think the ending wrapped up a little quickly, which could be pretty common for like a chick lit or a women's lit. But overall, I would say I gave it 3.5 stars, but I did round it up to 4 on Goodreads, so it was just like a timely read. So I am attempting to finish one more book in May. Today is the 30th, tomorrow's the 31st. I am currently listening to an audiobook that I think I may finish before the end of the day tomorrow. So you will probably see me one more time, even though I'm sure that is what I said in my last like catch up that I did. So we shall see, but that's all for now. All right, I can officially say I have finished my final book of the month of May. Nothing like the last minute. It is basically 8 o'clock on May 31st, but I just finished The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson, and wow. Now, I should have probably been listening to Audrey at Chapter Converse for a long time now about picking up Peter Swanson sooner, but I haven't. So I finally picked it up, and because I didn't realize I didn't realize I had the book on my Kindle until I was like scrolling through and trying to organize my Kindle. And the book was, the audiobook was also on Scribd or however you pronounce it. And so I was like, perfect. I will do both. The audiobook was super interesting because it had 3 different narrators, because you're getting, actually it might have had 4 different narrators. You're getting 4 different perspectives throughout the whole book. And I don't want to say too much, because just when you think you have it figured out, this book throws you for a loop, and it like continues to throw you for a loop. Basic premise is we have a guy that meets a woman on a plane flying home from London, and basically decides to spew out his entire story about how he knows his wife is cheating on him, and kind of jokes that he'd like love to kill her, until she's like, really? And they start to plan it out. And the whole story goes from there. And yeah, just every twist, every turn, I didn't really expect it. And like I said, I don't want to say too much, but it was really pretty good. Although there were things I didn't predict about the ending, it felt a little rushed. So I ended up giving it like 4.5. I can't really decide, because I did really enjoy it and I didn't want to put it down. And I will for sure be picking up the next one, which I think is The Kind Worth Saving. Of course, I don't know. I'll put the cover on here. So I'll probably pick that one up, and probably sooner than later, because once I'm in a series, I kind of like to keep it close so I remember. But yeah, overall, a really great reading month in the month of May. Hopefully you enjoyed this vlog style that I went back to. For me, it is so much easier because I am more likely to remember the details of the book right after I finish it, or within a few days of finishing it, versus trying to remember it all at the end of the month. So let me know below if you still like this format, and if you have any suggestions on what I should pick up next, leave them in the comments. As always, if you like this video, feel free to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.